Dot, 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 dot. Good morning, everybody. It's Grant from State of the Spark, and I've got a very directed, pointed show for you today. I'm going to be asking you the questions you should be asking yourself. So bookmark this show and or send this show, tag somebody, share the show to someone you think might need some realignment. If you know someone struggling, it's the middle of the year. It's July 1st. That means it's a pivot point. It's another threshold moment. January 1st is a threshold moment for you to really do some good inquiry. There's some good energy in the world on setting goals, realigning with your goals. We're going to be talking about my top questions I ask myself at my beginning year review and my mid-year review as you pivot into the new year. Now, remember, if you're following any of the Spark methodology, it's also the first of the month and the first of the month. And it's also a quarterly transition, which means you're doing profit first payouts, which means you're actually trying to realign your goals. You're also setting the theme for July. But we can't forget to do a mid-year check-in. Are our goals even relevant anymore? We're going to be covering that today. And I've just got one piece of other news, but before any of that, we're going to be covering Morning Cup of Gratitude. Show me your morning cup of gratitude. Let me know what you're grateful for this morning. I see you lovely people bop in and out of the show, and you don't share what you're grateful for. You're killing me, Smalls. I live and feed and survive based on knowing that you're out there living a heart of gratitude. I'll start first. What I'm grateful for, number one, is new workouts. Yikes. I'm absolutely sore today, and there's always an effect that we always forget to communicate after we start a new workout regime. It's this. The next day, the headaches. So I don't know if you get this, but when I exercise and I get all that lactic acid moving around in my body and the buildup and my muscles start tightening up, all the toxins and all the impurities get released into the body, all the fat starts getting released. And the next day I have like a hangover, a workout hangover, at least for the first few days when I get back into a good workout routine. So this morning I'm hyperhydrating, but I'm grateful for that because it lets me know I'm alive. What lets you know you're alive? What absolutely is keeping you pumped out of your mind that you know you're alive, you're well, you're doing good? The other thing I'm grateful for is this. Number two, I'm absolutely grateful for friends who are clients and those types of clients who are more friends than clients. I got to have lunch yesterday with Jamie Clements of Loud Life, and he's been a coaching client, but he and his wife have become friends and have a great affection for just who they are and their journeys. And we had a great time yesterday. And then as we left lunch, we carried the lunch into the park and we're just discussing kind of where his business is at and what's some follow-up from our coaching time together. And then we started getting rained on, so we moved it under the awning, and then we got soaked, and then we ran back to the car, and I just got drenched. Those fun moments with friends who are clients, who are friends, I really appreciate that. What are you grateful for this morning? What's keeping you pumped? Let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about other news and crazy artists who are absolutely getting insane. Now, in general, I like to share other news that makes you smarter, other news that makes you more interesting at the water cooler, other news that elevates you as a human being. I've got news today that will not elevate you as a human being. In fact, this other news is, I'm sharing it with you of the type of person to not be, but also to appreciate the absolute insanity that our world is getting. I don't know if you know this, but last month, Italian artist Salvatore Garau released one of his finest sculptures yet, known as Immaterial. Yes, it was a invisible sculpture, non-existent, and it actually sold really on auction for $18,300. Now, if that wasn't insane enough, the art world is going insane about NFTs and digital art. 63 million was the latest one. It was sold for $63 million. This one was an invisible sculpture sold by Mr. Garau for $18,300. Now, if you think that's crazy, follow me, because this next piece of other news starts with Florida man. So Florida man Tom Miller, who is a renowned artist in Gainesville. Well, he's a renowned performance artist in Gainesville. And he is filing a lawsuit against Italian artist Steve Garau, saying that It's plagiarism that he already installed an invisible sculpture exactly like Salvatore Garral's in 2016. In fact, performance artist Tom Miller in Gainesville, Florida, actually had a mockumentary talking about how silly a lot of art is, and actually installed his piece of work, his art, called Nothing, in the Gainesville's Bo Diddley Community Plaza. We should all go visit it one time, take selfies with it. So he is suing Salvatore for plagiarism. And it's a real lawsuit going through. And if you can't appreciate the layers of irony going on with this, I'm telling you, you must be a bump on a log. It's absolutely ridiculous. But people are spending real money, $18,300, for real, invisible sculptures. And now Tom Miller is making a point. If you want this to be real, you need to level up. So he is going to sue him, and now they have a provability case in court. So I actually appreciate some of the genius ridiculousness of performance artist Tom Miller to call out the BS of ridiculous artists. So, I don't have that link. I'll have to find the link and share it with you. I was going to drop that link in the comments for you to ponder and check out how ridiculous art can get. I like real art. I like good art. I like art I can prove. And Tom Miller's going to see, Salvatore Garral, can you prove or disprove the fact that your artwork isn't a complete plagiarism of my own? And the other layer is this: even if he says, well, I can't prove it, it's invisible, and Tom Miller's case is, yes, I installed an invisible sculpture, and that is what you are copying. So he kind of wins on both accounts. It's ridiculous. Look it up yourself. I'll come up with a link and drop it in the comments. And that, my friends, is the ridiculous piece of other news. And it makes me think of this one thing, which actually is valuable for you to take away. Sacred clowns. If you are not familiar with the concept of sacred clowns, I have been intrigued with this, and more so in the last few weeks and months. And it's the idea of this. Sacred clowns. Good morning, Jessica. Thanks for your like. Sacred clowns use humor or ridiculousness, not always humor. Sometimes it's very serious, but ridiculousness to call out insight. In indigenous tribes, several indigenous tribes had this tradition of sacred clowns, and they were a form of shaman. They would ride their horses backwards or put on their headdresses backwards. They would dance into the square backwards, or they would speak in riddles. They would do upside down things and ridiculousness things. They would actually enter very solemn affairs completely drunk, or go to drunken affairs completely serious. They would live irony. And they would do this, and it was a very serious practice. They would do this to call out, usually in the local tribe, what's going on that's ridiculous, what should be called out. And there's often not a platform for two people to talk to one another. For example, if a couple in a tribe were fighting, and it just was absolutely ridiculous, in the next major annual ceremony, the sacred clowns would dress like that couple and do ridiculous things to call out the silliness. Now, in ancient times, this was often viewed as a prophetic gesture. Think of Middle Eastern prophets. The sacred clowns are very similar in their seriousness of how they were taken by the tribe, but they had a very laughable approach. And that laughable approach made it easier for the offenders of the tribe to acknowledge, I am being ridiculous and this is silly and let's get over this. It basically is a pattern interrupt. And I've been very intrigued by being the sacred clown, being the butt of the joke, but intentionally, in order to break the ice, if you will, of topics that shouldn't be touched on. And the artist Tom Miller has done that. And you should watch for that, because I'm watching for sacred clowns all the time. Another very dark example is from the movie Watchmen, the character comedian who has died in the comic book. The whole comic book opens with this character dying, but they always reflect, and there's always flashbacks, and the comedian, though dark and heavy, always lives and exudes the character of the sacred clown. I encourage you to check that out. Very interesting stuff, but that's what we're learning from Tom Miller. He's living the sacred clown, basically calling out how ridiculous some of this invisible artwork really is. That's your piece of other news. Hopefully you're smarter. Hopefully you have something to add to the world with that. Hopefully you've been elevated. Let's talk about the questions I'm going to ask you for your mid-year review. All right, folks. So long story short, I had a very long, well-written piece about the paradigm of death and how the paradigm of death can actually elevate you to handle stress better in observing the observer. Whoa, sounds super heavy. Yeah, maybe we'll save that for a Friday. It occurred to me in the middle of this that the mid-year review, so many of you are trucking along. So many of you are grinding it out. I watched Marissa since we got back on Monday night, Tuesday and Wednesday. She's just been grinding here, just working her butt off. And I feel guilty. I've been taking some time to kind of doing other directions that I know I need to take our brand and the company. But she's actually in the grind doing this over here. And I was watching that, and then I met with several clients over the last few days. I've talked to several people over the last few days, and they are nearly in a panic. Are you feeling this way? There's something about the summer. It's like middle of summer. And I think people are realizing we're technically out of pandemic protocols, right? We're in normal business, and now they're getting so busy, and they're in a fury trying to get over the wash of work and changes going on. We're wrapped up in the work. We're unable to come up for air. And the year has improved for some people. We've seen phenomenal growth even in the last 12 to 6 weeks. But it's also delivered new challenges to others. We were talking to a restaurant owner here locally, and their prices have gone beyond doubling and tripling. They've even had to rebag some of their food items because of the way prices are just out of control. Are you seeing similar events going on in your industry, in your business, in your job? So it's always good at the turn of a quarter, at threshold moments. Threshold moments carry specific energy. Threshold moments have an air of change. And we encourage people to take every opportunity of a threshold moment, the end of a month, the end of a week, the end of a month, the end of a quarter, the middle of the year, and especially the end of the year. A lot of personal development gurus poo-poo setting goals in the beginning of the year, and I call BS on that. There's a lot of good energy and grace for you to set goals, change direction, or make massive changes you need to make at these threshold moments, and I encourage you to leverage them. It is July 1st, and this is a threshold moment. Now, I have a set of questions I ask myself at the beginning of the year, and I review at the middle of the year. And I wanted to take a moment and gift these questions to you. They're an insight into myself, and maybe in the Goals and Gratitude group, if you go over and join the Goals and Gratitude group or start the conversation there, we can talk more about just transparency on my goals, the goals I set at the beginning of the year, where we're at in the middle of the year. And for all the highfalutin philosophies, for all the highfalutin techniques and tactics and hacks and productivity, goals are still the foundation. Where you're going. Forget the word goals if that's too much baggage. Where your compass is pointed still guide what you should be doing. And oftentimes, there's an undercurrent message that I'm always trying to share with you guys, whether we're talking about meditation, whether we're talking about space of mind, even my talk that I had written that I've abandoned for now about focusing on death. A lot of this is kind of a spiritual approach to giving you the space of mind in the moment to do a mid-year review and checking on your goals. Let me just ask. Now, again, if you're just checking in the middle of the day, or if you get busy, need to dip off, bookmark today's show, share it with somebody. We live on shares, we live on likes, tag somebody who might need it. And here's the exact process I recommend you do. Number one, if you have wall calendars, pull them down and gather them up. Number two, if you use a physical journal, gather that up and open it up. Number three, open any journal entries if you do that digitally. And then I want you to compare your journal entries and some of the notes you've made and some of the comments you've made. And it might take you a little while, but I want you to compare those with the goals you had set at the beginning of the year. What were your goals in the beginning of the year? What have you been talking about in your journal? Do they correlate at all? Are you way off the reservation? Which we do. If we're 1 degree off now, by the time we hit the horizon, we're 27 miles off course. that 1 degree shift. So as you gather these documents up and look at them, compare them. And then just ask yourself, the first step is just to ask yourself, what are my current goals? My current goals in fitness and health, for those who know the Freedom Framework instead of the Spark, for what we call the total life experience. And the total life experience is that you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, you feel a level 7 to 10 in the areas of fitness and health, healthy, happy relationships, work you enjoy, and spirituality. And those are the foundation of the goal areas plus a few more. Number 1, what goal did you set in the beginning of the year for fitness and health? What goal did you set in the beginning of the year for personal and relational development? What goal did you set in the beginning of the year for your business and the work you really want to be doing? What goal or goals did you set for yourself on the income you wanted to be making? What goal did you set for yourself on travel and adventure in the beginning of the year? What goals did you set for yourself on personal development and education, including spiritual development? Now, those are just 6 areas that I set goals in, and they usually cover the TLE, the total life experience. So here are that's the initial kickoff questions. That's like the assessment of where I said I wanted to be. And it's the middle of the year. So if you have an accretive, like with income, if your income goal was, $60,000 this year, okay, that means $5,000 a month. That means I should be at $30,000. Did that happen? Or you might have an exponential goal, meaning it picks up steam as you get closer to the end of the year. And that might be sales, that might be fitness. Fitness usually comes together like at an exponential rate, meaning let's go this way. There's not a lot of growth. And then suddenly you see a lot of growth. So you need to decide what your milestone should be in the middle of the year. You should have done this in the beginning of the year. That's part of the annual goal setting process. You decide if it's like halfway mark, am I halfway to my goal, or halfway mark, where should I be? Now, here are the questions I want you to ask, and I want you to pause, take a breath. And in a journal, actually answer these questions. Number 1, what is my favorite memory? And in this case, it's the last 6 months. What is my favorite memory? Number 2, did I continue to use the tools that I started with? Calendars, your journal or Moleskine, your desk calendar. I got a desk calendar right here. Your Google Calendar. Did I continue to use the tools? Was there any correlation? Question number 3. Was there any correlation between underperformance, meaning are there any goals that I didn't hit? And is there any correlation between that and whether or not I use the tools? A schedule, managing your time. I don't mean Google Calendar. I mean managing your energy. Google Calendar is one of those tools. But a schedule, how you manage your energy, more often than not, completely determines whether or not you hit your goals, despite the outward onslaught of stressors and requirements on your life. So was there any correlation between underperformance? I didn't hit my fitness goals. Great. Was there any correlation to whether or not you actually made that a priority on your calendar? For me, the answer is yes, there's a complete correlation. When I did not live up to the commitment I made to go to the gym so many times at certain hours, my health, there was a direct correlation. When Marissa and I don't put it on our calendar to travel, we don't get that travel and adventure. We have to put it on the calendar. Question number 4. Did I act with discipline? Have you acted with discipline? And on a scale of 1 to 10 or even 1 to 100, how much discipline? And what percent of the time? A lot of people say, well, sometimes, yeah. Well, what percent of the time? Well, 10% of the time. Is that going to get you there? I contend you absolutely need at least 51% of the time to be working with absolute level 9 or 10 discipline to get where you want to go. Why? Because the world wants to take from you, not maliciously. Energy transfers. And those who have the highest level of energy, that energy will actually draw more energy. Those people with the clearest vision, Those people are vortexes for energy. And if you're not careful, you'll start saying yes to everything. And that is saying yes to the energy you've been given on this life, in this life. So did you act with discipline? Did you say no to what you should have said no to? Did you say yes when the calendar said, I am supposed to go to the gym at this hour? Yeah, but what about all this work? Yeah, what will people think? Yeah, but look at all this other stuff. Now, you got to have the presence of mind to decide when to give into that. But you should be giving into that less often instead of more often. 49% or less of the time, you should be actually giving into those demands. So that was number 4. Did I act with discipline? Number 5, what went extraordinarily well for you in the last 6 months? Write it down. Write it in your journal. Pause this video and write in your journal. Watch this video over and over again and pause it and actually write down what went extraordinarily well. Then ask yourself, what went poorly? What went really bad? Have a gut level, honest communication in your journal. What went really bad? What's not cutting it? Then ask the question, what did I accomplish? This year, Marissa and I think we had this goal written. I'd have to look. We got our first investment, it's actually technically our third investment property, but it's the second one we own, but it's our first beach property, and it's our first one that we haven't been managing ourselves. The first hands-free investment property up and running. That's a huge accomplishment. We visited our family. Our flexible life allowed us to show up at for someone's birthday in South Carolina, which ended up being a celebration service, a going home service, if you will. And then our flexibility allowed us to get in the car at the last minute thought and drive to Kansas and spend time with family. That was special. We accomplished that. We accomplished onboarding a new team. What have you accomplished? What are you proud of? What did you not accomplish? This is just looking at the numbers and saying, I didn't accomplish my fitness goals. And here's a confession. I did not hit 178 pounds or 180 pounds fitness-wise. I haven't been eating right. Confession, what have I not accomplished? I haven't hit that goal. I haven't released my book. And though I've got my book and I've got it in beta, I haven't actually had that meetup yet. And it's bothering me. It's nagging at me. And this mid-year review is going to reveal that. And I'm going to act on it and fix that. And these last 2 questions, just 2 last questions. What characteristics did I exhibit that I do not like? This year I'm discovering new layers of insecurity relationally for me. What characters do I want to continue? How have I stepped up? I have an ability to talk about things that bother me. I want to continue that trait. I have the ability to, I'm improving my ability to prioritize. I like that trait. What traits have you exhibited that you like? I love my paradigm. I really do. Now, it's not always the most productive, but when push comes to shove and there's too much demand on one's life, when there's too much demand on your life, do you have the characteristics to say yes to the things you should? What should I say yes to, Grant? Well, at bare minimum, Maslow's hierarchy of need. Forget Maslow. I actually don't buy that anymore. At bare minimum, the things that make you happy, the introspection, the advancing of life, even at the cost of the daily nagging, the daily demands. Grant, you've got client needs. Yes, and I serve those client needs. I've got employees to serve those client needs. And I have come to the point where clients don't follow you. And if a client doesn't follow you, I can do only so much to serve them. I used to go way beyond. When a client wouldn't follow our needs in the website company or in the coaching companies, I would make up for them within their own space. And I have to realize that's not what they're paying me for. I'm not their employee. I'm not going to make up where they lack. I am their guide. And if they pay me to guide them and I try to guide them and they do not follow, I can go back down the trail and say, hey, this is the way. And they can say, I'm still not following. And go, okay, like I'm still going with the wagon train here. So I like the characteristic that I've been able to prioritize when these stressors have come up because our business, the empire of Spark has moved massively forward. And I can see that based on our 25% growth in website clients in the last 12 weeks. I don't say that to impress you. I say that to impress upon you. These last two questions, I think, are absolutely crucial to your questions for a mid-year review. What characteristics did I exhibit that I did not like? And I've got them. But what characteristics do I wish to continue? You need to not only critique yourself, you need to pump yourself up. Jessica says, boom, thank you for this list of questions. Sometimes I struggle with journaling, AKA starting the conversation between God and myself, and having a list of great questions is helpful. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. That is literally why I share mine, because this starts the dialogue. And these questions, and again, if you're just now popping in, we have how many of them? A list of maybe 12 questions that you ask yourself at the beginning of the year and mid-year review. Let me see what the number is. 10. A list of 10 questions. Pause the video, rewind the video. When we close out, watch, pause, and then journal. But what Jessica is getting at is that this is meant to open up the dialogue. This is meant to open up your prefrontal cortex. This is to move you out of the limbic brain and out of the orbitofrontal cortex and into the prefrontal cortex and the neocortex, where you are abundant-minded and thinking at the highest level. This is where you're not thinking as the person doing it, but you're thinking as the observer of yourself. Observe the observer. We'll talk about that, because that was the talk I was going to start with today, thinking about death, thinking about the highest level. The goal is to pull you out of yourself and observe yourself. We'll talk about that some other time. But these questions themselves are made to do it in a very practical way. What was my favorite memory? Boom. Pilgrim Song said, thank you for getting me to think more specifically and strategically about where I'm at and not at in my life goals. Pilgrim Song, I really appreciate that feedback. And if you don't mind, get vulnerable. Share. Where are you at and where you're not at? I tell you, I'm not at 178 pounds like I want to be, right? But where am I at? My business is growing. What about you, Pilgrim Song? What about you, the rest of you? Get honest. Get transparent with yourself. Because if you do not have these gut level honest conversations, and if you don't take a time out and pause, you will not do the work necessary, and you won't have the paradigm necessary to see. You won't even be able to see whether or not you're on the right track. Because I remember, oh man, there's a great quote somewhere on here, and I think it's from Lao Tzu, from the Tao Te Ching, and he says, be careful when you change direction, because you might just end up where you're going. It's a riddle. Are you on the right track? Now, you might have set a goal, but if you're off track, remember what I said, if you're off 1 degree, when you hit the horizon, you'll be off 27 miles. Well, Grant, I set a goal. I was just 1 degree off. Setting the goal is the first step. Recalibrating along the way will get you there. We got to recalibrate along the way. Or, Grant, I set goals, but I didn't get there. Yeah, but did you check in with those goals? You get it. I won't belabor it. Listen, if you need any help with things like this, we are talking about goals all the time in the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. It's called Goals and Gratitude and Success. Join the group, ask your questions, get involved. No spam, thank you, but just get involved and start sharing what your goals are and where you're headed and what's working for you and what's not. That's why we're there. And if you need any tools or training, visit us at State of the Spark. We're there. But we like having our dialogue in the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. And listen, no matter what you do today, go out there, make it an awesome day, do your mid-year review. But why? Why do we do these things? We do these things for the mission and not my mission. This is the mission of being alive. And the mission for being alive is to ignite lives of explosive significance, but starting with your own and then helping other people as well. Get out there, make it a killer day. Do ignite your own life of explosive significance. And we'll see you next time. Have a fantastic day.